Let's get into today's episode. So, unfortunately, it was the week from hell for the New York Jets in Green Bay. With the joint practices and the preseason game, there were a ton of injuries. And, guys got beat up. Denzel Mims, Sheldon Rankins, even during the game, Gerard Davis left with an injury. There are a bunch of different injuries, but the premier one, and probably the most impactful one, Carl Lawson, was lost for the season. What a heartbreaker. I was really bummed out. I'm still bummed out, and it's days later at this point because he was probably the guy I was most excited about signing in free agency. That's how much of an impact I thought he was going to have. The Jets haven't had an edge rusher in such a long time. I was penciling him in for double-digit sacks, and he's done for the year with the torn Achilles. It's awful, awful, awful. But now the Jets have some work to do. Do they either A, go with what they have with a rotation? You're going to have John Franklin Myers on one side, and then I'm going to assume Huff and Curry when he's healthy on the other, and maybe some mix and matching going on. Or do they go after the trade market? And according to Adam Schefter of ESPN, he came out with a report yesterday saying that the Jets are looking into a potential trade for an edge rusher. And while the Jets are definitely a rebuilding team, that's one of the benefits of having a boatload of draft capital is that you can afford to trade for a player if you seem fit or if you see fit for your roster. And also on top of that, so that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is they've made it abundantly clear they need their pass rush to work in this defense in order for this D to be successful. And with the loss of Carl Lawson, well, it's a big ask for Huff, even no matter how high you may be on him. I personally like him, but to say, okay, you're going to come in and replace the guy we paid $15 million a year for, I don't buy it. I don't. So would it surprise you if the Jets explored the trade market? No, it wouldn't. And there's two guys to me that stick out. Chandler Jones is someone that seems like a pipe dream to me. I would love Chandler Jones on this team. I just don't think it's super likely that they're going to bring him in. Again, I am not anti-bringing in Chandler Jones. I would just, if I had to put a percentage on the likelihood of that happening, it would be very, very slim. While these next two guys were, they're probably not stars, I think they're a little bit more obtainable, and it'll only take maybe like a mid-round pick to get something done. The first one we'll talk about is Dante Fowler. I feel like he's been talked about going to the Jets for seemingly ever. And I know he's had a very up and down and streaky career, but he's still only 27 years old. I feel like he's been in the league forever, but he's still only 27. Last year, he had 3 sacks, but 23 pressures to go along with it for the Atlanta Falcons. Year before that, with the Rams, 11.5 sacks, 35 pressures. So clearly the sack number is a little inconsistent, but the pressures still remain pretty good, even though he only had 3 sacks last year. Why there's a connection here is Saleh was a linebacker coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars in the early days of Dante Fowler, and last year Ulbrich was the defensive coordinator for Dante Fowler with Atlanta. So there's clearly a connection there. And then the other one that I think maybe you can draw a connection to is with Joe Douglas. And this guy's a little bit more veteran. Brandon Graham, 33 years old, but over the last 2 years, 8 sacks in 2020 with 29 pressures to go along with it, and 8.5 in 2019 with 30 pressures. So this is a good player. I know he's up there in age, but to me, those are the two guys that I think are the most obtainable. Sure, there are other bigger, like Von Miller, I've seen come up. Chandler Jones is another popular one. Essentially, just go on Spot Rack and see who's becoming a free agent at the edge position in 2022, and you pick a name out of a hat. But if I'm talking about likely candidates, to me, Fowler and Graham make the most sense because they already have a connection to either the head coach, the defensive coordinator, or the general manager. And I don't think the Jets are going to want to give up the asset to get a premier guy. I think they're going to look for, maybe a mid-round. Like, would it kill them to give up a third or a fourth? No, it wouldn't. Maybe even a second. And if a second gets it done for Chandler Jones, great. I would love that. I would be over the moon for it. I would find it hard to believe the Jets going that route. I think they're going to go with a more middle-of-the-pack kind of a guy because they're not in a win-now situation, and like, are you going to pay the premium to get a guy like Jones or a big name like Von Miller or something crazy like that? I just don't see Joe Douglas doing that. I think he'd probably bring in a stopgap option Or maybe who knows if Fowler plays well, maybe he'd be re-signed because he'd only be 28. But Graham at 33 seems a little bit more like a stopgap. I think that's the route that makes the most sense for the Jets. They know both of those guys, whether it be from the general manager or the head coach / defensive coordinator. So you guys let me know in the comments or on social media, wherever you're listening to this, if you think the Jets should trade for an edge, like one of the guys I listed off, maybe a bigger name guy, or should they just stay put and rotate a bunch of the youngsters? Maybe that's the move in a rebuilding year. But I can't say that I was shocked to see the Jets exploring the trade market because of the draft capital they have and the abundant need. Like, they need their defensive line to get home for this defense to have any chance. So, yeah, if they want to be competitive, they probably do need to add another edge rusher. And no, neither of these two guys are replacing Carl Lawson, but they're solid. So I would absolutely sign up for either one of those guys.